Most people wake up feeling like life just happens to them. Emails, news, chaos. They're already behind before their feet touch the floor. But here's something most of us forget. You don't have to be a prisoner of circumstance. You don't have to live in reaction mode. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He wasn't being poetic. He was being precise. The ancient world was brutal. Wars, betrayal, loss. Yet amidst that storm, he discovered something most of us still overlook. Peace isn't about silence. Happiness isn't about what happens. It's about where your mind chooses to live. That's not wishful thinking. It's a radical kind of responsibility, one that says, I don't control the world, but I do control how I meet it. And that, right there, is the doorway to freedom. This video isn't a lecture. It's not a self-help hack. It's a quiet invitation to stop, to breathe, to remember that the world's noise doesn't get to own your morning, or your mood, or your mind. What you're about to watch is a roadmap, not just to build a better routine, but to build a better life, one grounded in presence, resilience, and peace. Not because life is easy, but because you are ready. If you've ever felt like mornings are a blur, like the weight of the world lands before your first sip of coffee, if you've ever craved a way to wake up and actually feel awake, then you're exactly where you need to be. This isn't about turning you into a productivity machine. It's about turning your mornings into something sacred, something that reflects who you're becoming, not what the world demands of you. Because the truth is, the person who controls their morning often ends up controlling their life. And that control doesn't start with a schedule. It starts with the stories you allow in your head. So give this your attention, not because I'm talking, but because something inside you is ready to listen. Let's begin. Let's talk about mornings. Not the kind where you drag yourself out of bed already overwhelmed. I mean the kind of morning that reshapes everything, because it reshapes you. Most people think transformation is some massive moment, a spark, a breakthrough, a before and after montage. But real change, it's quieter than that. It begins the moment you choose not to hit snooze. When you get up not because you have to, but because something deeper calls you forward. That something has a name, Ikigai. It's a Japanese word that means reason for being. It's not just about what you love or what you're good at. It's about finding where those meet with what the world needs and what sustains you. It's waking up with purpose, not because your to-do list is long, but because your why is strong. Marcus Aurelius didn't survive chaos with willpower alone. He showed up each day with intention, not out of obligation, but out of honor. He believed that we all have a role to play, and the real tragedy isn't hardship. It's forgetting that we matter, that what we do, even when no one's watching, means something. So ask yourself, what pulls you forward? What would make you rise with energy instead of resistance? It doesn't have to be grand. Ikigai doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence, a quiet commitment to live aligned with what feels true. Start small. Ask what lights you up. Ask what people thank you for, what you lose track of time doing, and what the world in all its need would value in someone like you. Don't rush to answer. Sit with it. Write, reflect, revisit. Because what you're looking for is looking for you too. And once you find a thread, follow it. Not with pressure, but with curiosity. Maybe it's art. Maybe it's caring for others. Maybe it's building, teaching, healing, creating, or simply being present. Whatever it is, honor it. It's not fluff. It's not indulgent. It's the foundation of a life that feels real, not just impressive on paper. Because here's the truth, most people never pause long enough to realize. You don't need a massive life overhaul to change direction. You just need one morning where you choose to live like your life matters. Most people try to fix their mornings by hacking their alarms. Earlier wake-up times, louder ringtones, maybe even putting the phone across the room. But few stop to ask the deeper question. What kind of night sets you up for the kind of morning you want? The truth is simple, but powerful. Your morning doesn't begin when you open your eyes. It begins the night before. The decisions you make in those final hours before sleep. They echo into the next day like footsteps in a quiet hall. The screen you scroll before bed? It's not just noise. It's a message to your brain. Stay alert. Stay wired. And the mind listens. But what if we treated those late hours not like leftovers, but like sacred ground? A space for decompression, for reflection, for intention. This isn't about discipline that punishes. It's about rituals that restore. You're not trying to win some productivity badge. You're trying to build a life that feels less chaotic and more aligned. So, what helps? Start with simplicity. Turn down the light. Turn off the digital noise. Even 30 minutes without a screen before bed can shift your nervous system back into rest mode. And then, do something human. Journal, pray, plan. Even just sitting quietly with your thoughts is enough, because rest isn't just about sleep, it's about permission. Permission to let go of the day and prepare for the next one. Marcus Aurelius didn't have Netflix, but he had worries, wars, decisions, doubts, and yet he still carved out time at the end of the day to write, not for others, but to face himself honestly, to make sense of the weight he carried, and to place it down just enough so he could rest. That's what the night is for, to place things down. Even a 5-minute review of tomorrow's priorities can act like a compass. You're telling your mind, we have a direction. And when you wake up, that direction is still waiting. Deep rest isn't a luxury. It's a requirement for clarity. And clarity, when practiced consistently, becomes strength. So tonight, instead of collapsing into bed, arrive in it with presence, with intention. Like a general returning to his tent after battle, not defeated, but thoughtful, recalibrating, preparing. Because how you close your eyes shapes how you open them. There's a moment just after waking when the world hasn't flooded in yet. No notifications, no emails, just breath, stillness, light creeping through the curtains. And yet, for most people, that moment lasts maybe 5 seconds. Then the phone's in hand, the scroll begins, and the peace is gone. But it doesn't have to be. That first hour of the morning, it's not just another slice of time. It's sacred ground. It's when your mind is most open, your nervous system still soft from sleep, your thoughts not yet hijacked by headlines. Marcus Aurelius didn't start his mornings with other people's noise. He started them with his own clarity. In his meditations, he returned to the same theme again and again. You are responsible for your attention, and the quality of your attention determines the quality of your life. So here's a radical idea for a modern world. Take the first hour back. Make it yours, not your boss's, not the news cycles, not the algorithms, yours. No, that doesn't mean you need to meditate on a mountaintop or light incense in silence. It means you wake up and choose, what do I need? Not to be productive, but to be present. Maybe it's reading something that stirs your spirit. Maybe it's journaling the weird dream you just had. Maybe it's stretching, praying, or drinking coffee without a screen in sight. Whatever it is, make it yours, because that hour becomes your armor. If you start your day in reaction mode, you spend the whole day catching up. But if you start it in reflection, you lead. This is Stoicism in action, focusing on what you can control, your attention, your energy, your first thought of the day. Let the world wait. Let the headlines wait. Let the inbox wait. Give yourself 60 minutes to be fully human before the world tries to turn you into a machine. It's not selfish. It's strategy. Because when your morning begins from within, everything that comes after hits differently. The noise feels quieter. The problems feel solvable. The pressure feels manageable. Because you already started from center. Start there tomorrow. Not with the world's voice, but with your own. Discipline gets a bad reputation. People hear the word and think restriction, rigidity, rules. But real discipline, the kind that changes lives, doesn't feel like a cage. It feels like a compass. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shame. It whispers gently, "This is who I am. This is who I'm becoming." And that whisper, it begins with the smallest of actions, like placing your alarm across the room, not to punish yourself, but to make a promise, a silent, simple vow. I will rise because I said I would. Or making your bed, not because someone told you to, but because it's a small stand for order in a world that often feels anything but. These little rituals don't just prepare your space, they prepare your spirit. Because when you take the time to bring order to the external, you reinforce order within. It's not about perfection, it's about alignment. Marcus Aurelius didn't need a long checklist to feel accomplished. What he needed, and what he practiced, was showing up with consistency. Not just when it was easy, but especially when it was not. Because here's the truth. There will always be days when your motivation is absent, when your bed feels too warm, when your doubts feel too loud. But discipline isn't about motivation. It's about memory, the memory of who you're becoming, the memory of the commitment you made to yourself, the memory of how it feels to live with self-respect. And you build that memory every single morning, not through grand gestures, but through quiet, repeated decisions. Like rising, like straightening the sheets, like breathing deeply instead of rushing, like showing up again. That's how strength is formed, not all at once, but little by little, tiny vote by tiny vote, each act casting a ballot for the kind of person you are shaping into. That's what Stoicism understands so well. That virtue isn't an accident. It's a daily practice. It's carved into you through repetition. So no, making your bed won't solve your life, but it might just remind you that you still have a say in how your day begins. That even when the world is messy, you can create a little pocket of intention, a little sanctuary of order, right there in the silence of morning. And from that place, you rise stronger. Some mornings, you'll rise with energy, you'll stretch, you'll breathe, you'll feel proud before the sun fully rises. And then, there will be mornings where it all falls apart. You sleep in, you scroll for an hour, you skip the journaling, the breath work, the stillness. You feel like you lost. But that's not the truth. You didn't lose the battle. You're in the middle of it. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, the philosopher, he had bad days. You can read it in his journals. Moments of doubt, of frustration, of falling short. But here's what makes him timeless. He didn't quit when he fell. He reflected. He learned. Then he tried again. That is the true heart of discipline, not perfection, but return. You don't have to be flawless to live with virtue. You have to be consistent enough to keep coming back to your values. And sometimes, consistency means forgiving yourself. Gently. Honestly. Not letting yourself off the hook, but offering yourself a hand so you can stand again. Because shame is heavy. It slows the climb. But compassion? That's fuel. That moment you forgive yourself for slipping. That's the moment you begin again with clarity. And clarity breeds strength. Not the strength to never fall, but the strength to fall and still return. Your alarm goes off and you don't rise? Okay. What now? Will you spiral into self-judgment, or will you pause, breathe, and make a better choice in the next moment? That's Stoicism. Not cold, not harsh, but clear-eyed, honest, committed to truth, including the truth that we are beautifully flawed. There will be days when you fail. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. And when you learn to treat your failures with curiosity instead of cruelty, you grow faster, deeper, stronger. So keep showing up, not because you're perfect, but because you're invested. You're building something real, and real things take time, patience, effort, and grace. Marcus didn't say, be perfect. He said, be patient. He said, begin again. He said, live in accordance with nature. And nature doesn't bloom all at once. You are unfolding. That's not weakness. That's the process. So show up tomorrow, not to prove anything, but to honor who you're becoming. We all know we're going to die, but we rarely live like we remember that. And that's where everything changes. Not with fear, but with focus. Memento mori. Remember you must die. It sounds grim, but it's not about dread. It's about clarity. It's about anchoring your life in what truly matters. Because when you carry the awareness of death gently in your pocket, you stop wasting time. You stop chasing shadows. You stop needing to win arguments that don't matter or impress people who don't care. Suddenly, what once felt urgent fades, and what's truly important comes into view. Marcus Aurelius wrote about it often, that each day could be his last, and that knowledge wasn't a burden. It was a compass. He asked himself, if this were my final sunrise, would I be proud of how I'm spending it? Imagine living that way, not in panic, but in presence. Imagine waking up and knowing, today is a gift I'm not guaranteed. What will I do with it? Will I complain? Will I scroll? Will I numb out and wait for the weekend? Or will I show up? Will I love? Will I create something that outlives me, even if it's just a moment of kindness? This isn't about fear of dying. It's about the courage to live, fully, intentionally now. When you remember death, you remember what life is for. You remember that the mundane is sacred, that washing the dishes can be a prayer, that holding someone's hand can be legacy. This mindset doesn't shrink your world. It sharpens it. It cuts away distraction. It makes the moment glow. Because every sunrise might be your last. And if it is, how would you want to show up for it? You don't need to live in dread. You just need to live on purpose. Every day is an unpromised invitation to love deeply, to act clearly, to speak honestly, to forgive quickly, to begin again. That's what Memento Mori really asks of us. Not to fear death, but to revere life. To let each breath remind us we're still here. And that means We still have time to make something beautiful out of it. What if the key to happiness is imagining the worst? It sounds backwards. We're told to visualize success, to picture abundance, to focus on what we want, not what we fear. But the Stoics, they had a different approach. They practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of loss. Not to torture themselves, but to prepare, to build strength, to deepen their appreciation for what they already had. Imagine waking up and for just one moment you picture life without the things you love most. Your home, your job, your health, your partner, your child. You don't dwell there. You don't spiral into fear. You pause. You feel it. Then you return to now. And suddenly, now feels sacred. That morning cup of coffee? It's not routine. It's a miracle. The voice of a loved one in the next room? It's not background noise. It's a blessing. This practice isn't about negativity. It's about contrast. Because contrast creates clarity. And clarity creates gratitude. We are wired to take things for granted until they're gone. And the Stoics said, why wait for loss to teach us? Why not learn now, while we still have time to appreciate? Seneca once wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has previously contemplated their coming." In other words, when you've already walked through the storm in your mind, you're less shaken when it arrives in real life. You're steadier, more centered, more prepared. Negative visualization isn't about anxiety. It's about agency. You're not hoping bad things happen. You're building the emotional muscle to meet life as it is, messy, unpredictable, real. So try it. As you sip your coffee, imagine not having it. Then sip again, deeper. As you hug someone, imagine missing that hug. Then hold them tighter. This isn't a morbid game. It's a way to wake up, to reconnect with the depth of ordinary life. The Stoics weren't cold. They were clear. They didn't avoid suffering. They trained for it. And in doing so, they found joy not in what was perfect, but in what was present. You can do that too. Every day. A moment here. A breath there. Imagine the loss, so you can love what's still here. You don't have to end every day with answers, but you can end it with gratitude. Not because everything went right, but because you're still here, still breathing, still learning, still in the game. In a world addicted to what's next, gratitude is the sacred pause. It says, I saw that. I felt that. It mattered. It doesn't need to be grand. You don't need a dramatic breakthrough or perfect day. Gratitude feeds on the ordinary. The moment you laughed unexpectedly, the breeze through your window, the fact that you tried, even if it didn't work. And here's what makes it powerful. Gratitude isn't a mood. It's a practice, a discipline of awareness, a decision to look again and to see better. The Stoics knew this. They didn't chase pleasure. They trained presence. Because when you're truly present, you realize how full life already is. So before you collapse into sleep tonight, pause. Pick up a pen. Write down 3 things. Not goals or fixes. Just moments that made today less heavy. A smile, a silence, a small victory. Even the fact that you made it through. That counts too. This isn't about forced positivity. It's about balance. Because if you don't name what's good, the noise of what's bad gets louder. Gratitude turns the volume back down. It returns your focus to what sustains you. And when done regularly, it becomes a thread of light that weaves through every day. Marcus Aurelius would write each night, not for approval, not for productivity, but for peace. A ritual to close the loop, to acknowledge his efforts and also his limits. That's what this is. A gentle closing, a light in the dark, a way to tell yourself, I didn't waste today, I lived it, and I'll try again tomorrow, and that's enough. You won't always feel ready. You won't always feel motivated. But if you let that decide your mornings, you let that decide your life, because how you begin is how you continue. The Stoics knew that greatness wasn't in grand gestures. It was in repetition, in showing up, in returning to the same actions, not because they're easy, but because they're foundational. Making your bed, waking up at the same time, breathing, writing, stepping outside into the morning air. Each one is a quiet declaration. I am still building. I'm still in this. And the truth is, you're never just building a habit. You're building identity. And over time, identity shapes legacy. Every morning that you rise when you said you would, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. Not someday, today. You become the person who follows through, who acts with intention, who doesn't wait for the world to be perfect before deciding to live on purpose. Marcus Aurelius didn't have control over politics or people or war, but he had control over his thoughts, his values, his habits. He woke up each day with the same choice we have now. Will I lead myself or be led by noise? That choice begins in the quiet of morning, before the messages come in, before the world starts pulling at your attention. That's where your power lives. Not in loud moments, but in silent ones. Not in what you say, but in what you do. You don't need a dramatic transformation. You need small consistencies. And you need them often. Because when the storms come, and they will, it's not the motivation that holds you steady. It's the discipline you built before the clouds arrived. It's the trust you have in yourself because of what you've practiced when no one else was watching. So tomorrow, wake up with that in mind. Not for productivity, but for presence, for peace, for strength. Your morning isn't just a beginning. It's a brick. And day by day, brick by brick, you are building the life you'll leave behind. Let it be one you're proud of. So here we are, at the end of a journey that began in silence. A simple morning, a breath, a moment of choice. Through 10 practices, we haven't just explored a routine. We've traced a mindset, one rooted in presence, guided by intention, and built on quiet strength. And maybe that's the legacy worth chasing. Not applause, not perfection, but peace in motion, purpose in repetition. A life shaped not by what happens to us, but by how we rise to meet it one morning at a time. So let me ask you, if tomorrow were your first brick, what would you build? If this video moved you, you already know what to do. Leave a word, leave a mark. And if you'd like, walk further with us, right here. Subscribe, stay curious. And until next time, live simply, stand still, breathe deeply, because this moment, it's already enough.